If we don't allow ourselves to daydream and drift or meander or saunter or linger, if we don't do those things, that part of our brain can't access the deep wisdom of the body.
I was reviewing some of your work on the art of contemplation, and pausing's the first step. And I thought, most people get that, actually, believe it or not, I think, and do that. But the harder part, and the reason I said I think it's hard, is that you then talk about the second step, if I understand correctly, of pivoting.
Yeah.
And that part, as part of contemplation, turning difficult situations into a gift, approaching challenges with an open heart. I thought that's what we don't do in general. We pause. Yeah. I'm just speaking now in, a big broad brushstroke. Okay, great. I paused. I went on a run. I stopped. I drank my tea, and I thought about all the things that are screwed up about this situation in my life. And I thought I was pausing and contemplating. That's not pivoting. You're talking about something else.
No. It requires a lot of patience, contemplation. If you understand its essence, it's a long-term view, right? So you don't put yourself on. One of the first things you have to see is where we put ourselves under pressure. And one of the beauties of the second stage of contemplation, as you said, pivoting, is that we don't make it happen. It just happens in one of the pauses. But unless we're taking conscious pauses and we are delighting in them, we don't have those pivotal experiences. Usually a pivotal experiences is where we finally come into touch with some aspect of our own shadow, and we have a little revelation, or it might be a big revelation, or it might be something that someone says, or it might be, an animal coming up to us, or it might be a moment of magic, or something that we're not expecting. But it happens in a pause, and then it triggers that little awakening samadhi inside us. So if you are genuinely kind of entering into the spirit of contemplation, then sooner or later you will start to have more pivotal experiences, but especially understanding that you're not going to make them happen because they're not conscious. They don't consciously occur. They occur unconsciously. They occur from, it's like we have the default mode network in the brain, which is the part of the brain that needs to daydream. And if we don't allow ourselves to daydream and drift or meander or saunter or linger, if we don't do those things, that part of our brain can't access the deep wisdom of the body, because the wisdom's in the body. And it's like Gene Keys is a wisdom system. It's not a knowledge system. I mean, people think it's a knowledge system, and they often approach it like a knowledge system, thinking they're going to get knowledge back out of it. But it's not. It's a triggering system to trigger the wisdom in the body. And so the wisdom's in us, as opposed to the knowledge. Knowledge is something you take in or you put in, whereas wisdom is like, it has to be triggered so that it can emerge from inside out. It's a yin practice. Contemplation is a yin practice. It is the most yin. And so you have to be really patient, and then sooner or later, you will start having these pivotal experiences. And it's like if you come to the Gene Keys community, right? There's thousands of us all around the world, right? Doing these crazy things, looking at and, contemplating. If you come into one of those forums or whatever and you talk, and you hear someone talking, they will say, look, my first breakthrough came when this happened. And once you've had your first kind of big breakthrough, you kind of get it. You're like, oh, bloody, I get it. It's like this stuff works. It just works from the inside out. It's like we have to sort of trick our strategic mind into kind of doing something that's not logical. It's a technique that isn't a technique, but it's been used for centuries and millennia by different people. So it's something that comes actually quite naturally to us, and it's not so natural in our modern world because of the way we're conditioned, because of our technology and social media and our kind of crazy binary world that we live in, where every moment is numbered. But once we start to break out of that, then we have these epiphanies, these moments, And that's when the magic starts to occur. And then you start finding that you pause more often. And it doesn't mean you become less it doesn't mean you're doing less. It just means you're doing everything slightly differently in a slightly more yielding, soft-hearted manner. You become softer. Not, you still have a sword when you need it, but you just become a more yielding being. Does that make sense?
I still have a question, which is, I think in the pausing.
Thought you might.
In the pausing, there's this, okay, what's the hack I do now? And, I'm not a big fan of the word hack, but still, like, what's the thing I do now? Do I ask this question? I'm going to transform the shadow into a gift. Is there a set of things no, I'm supposed to be patient, gentle, and be in the pause, and something is going to emerge that's like a pivoting perspective. And I just wait for that?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's not, like the word hack does not go with contemplation, right? It's the opposite of hacking. It's the softest way, and therefore it's the quickest, because the strategic mind can't get in there and do something. I mean, part of the trick of the Gene Keys, because it's all just a trick. It's a hall of mirrors. It's a system. It's made up. Any system is a trick to trick you. To trick your strategic mind into relaxing so that something opens up inside you, and then you come into tune with your inner nature. All systems, I'm sorry to say, are tricks. And Gene Key's the same. So it tricks your mind into sort of trying to unravel a shadow and think about it and understand it. And then the gift sounds good. I'd like to feel that. And the city sounds really out there. How am I going to get to ecstasy, but it's about opening up to the worldview and the possibility that, wow, actually, what if I were ecstatic? What would that feel like? What would that look like? How different would my life kind of be? And what would I do? Would I do anything if I experienced natural ecstasy? Does anyone have that? I've heard that maybe it happens. And so maybe one of the things you do in your contemplation is you start following these intuitive signals. So you might be like, well, I've got ecstasy. And you start reading about Ananda Maimar or someone, like one of these great saints who fell into ecstasy. And you're like, wow. And you start to resonate with your own energy field, and you find your way into that. And then you kind of bypass the need to actually try and do something, and it just happens on its own. It's a difficult thing to explain, but it does just happen on its own. But you do have to do the pausing part.
So just a couple more questions here. The path of gentle transformation, that's one of the ways you refer to the Gene Keys approach. And you mentioned these 4 different attitudes and approaches that are part of that: patience, gentleness, contemplation, and inquiry. And I feel like we've done a good job touching, at least pointing in the direction of patience, gentleness, and contemplation. I'm curious about the inquiry part, because I want to do something. So I want to inquire, at least in a Gene Keys-like way. What do you suggest for inquiry?
Well, that's the beauty of the Gene Keys. It's a system of inquiry. I remember I told you my gift was inquiry. So, it's an invitation to inquire into what makes you tick. So you get your profile, you look at the Gene Keys, you start to inquire, you start to read, you start to listen. I mean, I've laid out a lot of poetry and a lot of ideas and stuff. So it's like it starts to saturate you, the frequency of the teaching. It's a sort of transmission, and then you come into it, and it just keeps reminding you of who you really are. Not, I say to people, look, the shadow stuff, don't get too obsessed with it. Like, maybe you only need 10% of your awareness on the shadow, and the rest of your awareness could be on the gift and even the city. Because then you're being aware of the thing that's tripping you up, but you're not obsessing on I've got to pull that weed out. You're just aware of it lightly. And that is enough, actually, because then you pick it up when it comes out. but most of the time you're thinking about actually more positive things, and you're wondering, how can I engage this creativity or this energy in a more positive way? And so you're not negating the shadow, but you're kind of seeing the relationship between the two, because they're two aspects of our nature, like the bit that tries to trip us up, but then the creativity that it's preventing from emerging. So they're one thing, and it's just a set of tools that, if I'm absolutely honest, it sort of distracts your mind long enough for the miracle to happen. But it does also have a grit to it. That's important, because it doesn't shy away from difficult, material. So it does start with these shadows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard, like many people, I just hopped on the genekeys.com website. I put in my time of birth and everything. And when I got the report, I just thought, I'm not sure. I mean, any system kind of tells me this, tells me that. I don't know. What would you do to someone? I'm glad you used the example of doubt as an issue, who's just doubts that a report based on their birth time.
Yeah, you'll probably see reflected your very view reflected in the words. You might have judgment. You might have, the shadow of you. That may be where you begin things, from that place of like suspicion, and that could be a really valuable beginning. You could go, well, if I always begin from suspicion, what is that? Where did that come from? How do I get to the bottom of that? And what's the gift in that? Maybe so if it was judgment, for example, which would, could fit Gene Key 18, it's the other side of integrity, right? So the gift is integrity, because the integrity is like, I need to make sure this is real and this guy's for real. So I'm going to use this judgment, and but the flip side of the judgment is that it doesn't even want to go there. So it's like, I'm just going to, I'm not going to go there. Whereas if you open a little bit and see, well, what's hidden in that judgment, because it's a beautiful thing, but it might mean that you just need to soften a little bit into that pattern, open your heart, open your mind, and enter from an empty mind perspective instead of with preconceived ideas of what's going to happen or what you're going to get. I might suggest that you take a more contemplative approach and try and go in a bit more softly, and with a softer attitude, and you might be nicely surprised.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily life classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way, your way.